So, summertime, we find ourselves in different locations at times.
Mhm.
So we're not in person today, but we're gonna make it work. So Jessica, let me tell you what I was thinking. So I called today's uh talk going home, and
Okay.
it's not what some people may think when I'm saying going home. So let me tell you what I'm working with. I was looking at this TikTok, and it just really stood out to me. So imagine with me that one day a spacecraft comes to Earth, and these people who look like humans, maybe a little bit taller, maybe a little bit more, um, muscular or whatever, but they look like humans and they're black.
Mhm.
And they say, um, okay, we're coming to pick up our people. They're talking about all the black people. And so the world is like, what do you mean your people? They're humans. It was like, no, we dropped them off to assist humans in their evolution. And we realized that you treated them too poorly. And,
Mhm.
they were meant to be here and incorporate within the race. But we're just going to just take them all back home because you guys don't know how to treat them. And
Mhm.
so
I'm here for that.
and so all of a sudden you see all these black people where they're like, man, we can go home. Like, we don't belong here. We're not a part of we were here to help, not to be enslaved and all this good stuff. And I was thinking, I was like, first off, are we broken? And second, what do we need as a unit, a family, a community? What do we need to be restored? What would it look like to be restored? What would it look like to be a fully healed family? And I'm thinking about individual family units. What would it look like to have what would the model look like to have a cohesive family unit?
And I want to make sure, like, you're asking this for the black family unit, or are you just saying family
Well,
unit?
yeah, I mean, I'm sure it can apply for any culture, but I'm just thinking for my community in particular because, you can't fix nobody else if you ain't, you know what I mean, if you ain't good.
I agree, but like that question to me is like it's problematic. And the reason it's problematic is because it's a multi-layered answer. So like in the same principle to like where you can't just talk about fixing crime without talking about fixing poverty. It's like you don't just get to be like, well, what can you do to fix the crime? Like there is no such thing. So that's I'm like, what exactly do you mean? Because it's so layered and
It is.
everything is connected to the next
It
when it
is.
comes to restoring our family unit.
So I think for me, what I'm saying is, I want to see your traditional, strong father figure who is a protector, a provider, is the person you turn to for strength and guidance. I would love to see the supportive wife, a mother figure who is nurturing, caring, supportive, um, is has grace and is a calming spirit or a steady force, within home. I would love to see kids who, yes, make mistakes, but are engaged in the learning process and is trying to or is motivated to become the best versions of themselves that they can be. I would love to see a unit who is striving um, to become or to demonstrate um, just a symbol of a healthiness.
So I hear you in like your questions bother me. Not your questions, your desires, okay? They bother me not because they are not desires that we shouldn't have. I just feel like to have those desires just by themselves, it omits so much other stuff. So like for
Like what?
example, with what you were saying with the strong leader, director, protector, provider, the black man. Well, in order to see that, we're going to have to also eradicate, like the whole prison industrial complex, and how
Yo,
they
let's uproot that mug.
they
I'm
direct
serious.
us, our
It
men
doesn't work.
there. You said it
It,
what?
we know it doesn't work. The prison system does not work.
It doesn't.
It
It doesn't,
breaks
but the way that
the
they
majority of the
direct
men.
our men to it, which then removes them from the household, or, removes them from being able to be that strong father, for example, we can't have that conversation without having that conversation.
So let's take
Um,
a second. Let's take a second because I
yeah.
agree with you. Let's take a second to have that conversation, and I'll be real quick with it. So where do you attack that problem? I don't think you can attack it from the people who are putting people in prison because
Well,
I think they're gonna say we got to do something. If we don't put them in prison, then you're gonna have people out here lawless,
well,
breaking into your
I
house.
agree with that, but then I think it's also what I said a moment ago. Like we got to address the poverty, the inconsistencies that we have when it comes to the haves and the have-nots. When we think about particularly, or maybe I should say specifically, our community, a lot of us went into the direction of quote unquote crime out of desperation, out of not having and needing. I mean, basic needs, like food, just money to get health care, or, go to the doctor, medications, so we go on to a life of quote unquote crime, but then of course our crime is always looked at as way worse than what, the higher level crime is, embezzlement and all of that stuff. But that's a different conversation. But I think we would have to attack it on that level. So if there are lawmakers who are saying, well, if the people weren't committing crimes, then we need to send them somewhere. Yeah, I agree with you, but how about creating resources for those individuals who would benefit most for them?
Right.
Not making things like education and healthcare and food so hard to access.
Okay, but let me ask this, because I didn't grow up rich. I grew up in a majority of my life, single parent home, and it was a struggle.
Hmm.
And I know that's probably a story for a lot of people who may fall into the at risk category. Okay, I was definitely at risk and had opportunities to join the life of crime. You know what I mean? But chose differently and was able to come out of pattern pattern. Why can't there be why can't that be duplicated on a bigger scale? Do we have to automatically, or is it just an automatic thing that if you are in an environment of poverty, which is less than, does it have to be automatic that crime is going to be you want a viable option?
Yeah, I agree with you, where you say that you grew up in that existence and yet you chose differently. I was also one of those. And like you said, many of us, share that same story. But I think just as many as we can speak to or acknowledge that share that same story, there are actually more who don't. And I don't think that it is simply a matter of I just chose differently. I mean, it's a combination of, I believe, circumstances, variables. And let's just take one for example, which comes to my mind is once you've already done some act, and you've been in the system, that right there makes it damn near impossible for you to get out of it to turn your life around. So it's like you own the only options you end up having is to go right back to that same lifestyle, versus someone who never had been incarcerated. They were never a felon. I mean, look at how we treat felons. We remove so many rights from felons. They can't get good jobs, basic jobs, access to what student loans, but yet we want to be like, oh, but you can turn your life around. No, you can't. No, you can't. So, and I'm saying no, you can't from a resource perspective, not no, you can't from a ability or capability
Right.
um standpoint. But go
I,
ahead.
I I don't think that's going to help us get to the answer though. Like I get it, I agree, but there's got to be a master key that bypass all that strategicness. Like I do believe, hear me on this. I do believe there are people who promote poor people becoming desperate. Like they
I can agree.
positioning them to be desperate. We call it being in crisis. The to be desperate enough to make these foolish choices, but also inspire them to make these foolish choices. We glorify it in music. We it's almost like it's supposed to be second nature. Even in the environments that they're in, it's promoted. It's promoted in the environments that they're in. For example, you go into a black community, what do you see on every corner?
What in a liquor store?
Right. You go into a affluent community, you don't see a liquor store on every corner.
I agree, but are you saying that we're doing that?
No, 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 no. I think so. When people apply for businesses, liquor license, they have to get approved by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just open a liquor store and sell liquor anywhere you want to, even if you're a private institution. Because I used to be a part of a motorcycle club, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, they would have, get-togethers, and of course, some of the older guys, they drink beer and they'll sell them for like $1 a piece. They had to register
Mm-hmm.
with the
To make the
city and get
sale.
permission to do that, or they'll get shut down. So they're very particular about where these places go.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it more proved in your lower income areas by these people who are supposed to be our gatekeepers? Why is it way more approved in these lower economic areas than it is in these higher income areas?
Well, I think that's the whole point, right? Of what I started off saying. Like we can't just talk about the strong black father, black man without addressing all of that, because all of that is by design. It is intentional.
Right.
Isn't there something called like environmental psychology or something like that? That where it happens, where when this is your environment, your community that day in, day out, that you're accustomed to seeing, like you don't really even ascribe or try to have more. This is it. Even certain colors,
They got a
that
whole
you
study.
see.
They got a
You
whole
said
study.
what now?
It's sociology. They got a whole
It's
study towards
okay.
people and how they interact
Right.
and
And so
all
like you
that
don't
good
think that
stuff.
the powers that be or the gatekeepers as you put them, no sociology? Like it's all by design.
I agree, but why are we not standing up to them? Why are we just like, get out of our communities? No, why don't we go to these board meetings and say, not here? I think we could change a lot of stuff if we cut out we start with the negative influences that are around us, that are preaching, that are conditioning, not even preaching, conditioning our people to believe that you don't understand when you bypass a person's subconscious and you get into their subconscious, you bypass their conscious and you get into their subconscious, you can implant all kinds of ideas that they
Mm-hmm.
will feel as their own,
Mm-hmm.
but it really isn't.
I'm going to say something very controversial to that
Yeah, go ahead.
point, right? And
Go
this is
ahead.
just
Go
me
ahead.
kind of going off on a tangent. So just kind of let me get in my bag for a second.
Nah, go
So
ahead. Go
on
ahead.
that same note, right? Tyler Perry. Everybody loves Tyler Perry. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but he has so many shows out there, right, that are geared towards the dysfunctional relationships that Black women experience, right? And I've been saying, I
Right.
just said to a friend of mine, why doesn't he ever create a show that shows a functioning relationship, or a show where these women who, yes, have had some hard times, but they're going to therapy, they're healing, they're learning from it, they're taking back control of their life? Because that, when we see that, we're going to want to, as you said, that seed is planted. We're going to start to think that that's our idea. You know, maybe I should go to therapy. You know, therapy doesn't look so bad. You know, what is my issue with therapy? But no, it's only the toxicity of the relationships that we see. So yeah,
Money.
same principle to what you're talking about,
Money.
just in
That's
a
why. That's
different.
why I can't even say it's a race. I think it's now is capitalism, is greed versus humanity, and greed is winning out, and it is taking. And I'm sorry to say, chat, weak-minded people.
I agree, but when has it never been greed? Like I think like the whole
I think it was the
concept.
greed is on a whole. You're right, but I think the greed now is on such a whole nother level, or at least the commitment. At least there used to be a time there were better gatekeepers. There at least be a time people was like, "Hey, we're not going to watch this on TV." Like
Mhm.
there used to be these regulations. You can't show on certain things on certain TV. If you want to show it, you need to go to a private entity that
Mhm.
can. And even then, they had to identify what was going on. Nowadays, they're pretty much no regulations. I mean, other than showing like nudity on public TV,
Right,
and
which is
even
so
that
much.
is very, what
Yeah.
depending on what you call nudity. You know,
Yeah.
I, there's the gatekeepers have gotten so comfortable. The gate is pretty much inside of the house.
It is, and I think to like reference your earlier question about like why aren't we doing a better job of gatekeeping, or essentially like creating our own and having certain standards is maybe probably a word that I would use for us. And I believe that, I know, I'm sorry, that we did once upon a time. We did have those standards for ourselves. We did not allow certain activities, on our blocks, in our communities. You had those what we call street activists, and things, and your gatekeepers, the powers that be, take them out every single time.
True.
They bomb
On the
the
way.
community every single time we've done it.
You're
What are you
you're
saying?
right. No, I was like,
Oh,
you're right. I mean, you're right. You're right. You're right. But that doesn't mean we need to stop. I think we
I
have to.
agree. It
We
does
have
not mean
to.
that we need to stop, but not saying at all that this is right. But with you being in psychology, do you remember that monkeys in like some sort of like a cage
Mhm.
experiment where there was like
Yeah,
bananas at the
right,
top
and
of
every
it?
time they gotta spray water.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, for
Exactly.
sure. And eventually,
But that is exactly
nobody
what we're
would go up
experiencing.
there. That's
Right.
right. Yeah, the
And they
monkeys
know
would
that.
start beating them down if they even went
Yes.
for it. Oh yeah, yeah,
Yes.
for sure, for
That
sure.
is us in real time.
I'm sorry for those who are listening. The study was they put four monkeys in a room, put their favorite snack, a banana, on top of a ladder. And one monkey saw it, went to go grab the banana, climbed the ladder. They sprayed it with water or something harsh.
Mhm.
Another monkey tried to do it. They sprayed it with water, and they eventually realized that you're going to get hurt if you go for it. I think eventually what they did is they kept trading out the monkeys for new
Yep.
monkeys to see if the group would stop them. And if one monkey went up, I think everybody got sprayed. They started spraying
Mhm.
everybody with water. And eventually, if a monkey tried to go up, they stopped spraying the monkeys with water. But if a monkey tried to go up, the rest of the monkeys would beat them down,
Correct.
would beat them down senseless.
Mhm.
And I think we've, as a society, created that. It was like, if you take away, if you make us uncomfortable, if you're doing something that we deem is a threat, we're going to beat you down. and the thing we need is a threat to our way of life.
Okay, I'm having difficulty with what you just said in that last statement, only because that is what we're seeing with 45, 47. And I've heard people reference we need to be shaken up this way. And I just I refuse. I refuse. That's just what I
So
would. I refuse.
so I think he's picked up on something and is capitalizing on it for himself. We do need something. We need to change the status quo. We may not need what he's giving us, but
Hmm.
he's presenting it as a fresh new awakening, a fresh new, like all the old pressures, the old um politeness or whatever, all that stuff is out the window. And now we can look, we're getting a reality check. and
So,
and I do believe we need a reality check. It's just the person who's giving it now gets to shape reality in their image and in
hmm
their view, and what benefits them are the people that they're representing. And
hmm
but it's been needed. And I'm not even worried about 45 and 47. What I'm worried about is, can we capitalize on this now? Can we say we need to
I
go
agree.
in? And I'm talking about starting in my own home. Like, we need to go in and we need to revamp and we need to break the system.
I
I took
agree.
I was gonna
Go
say
ahead. I'm
something.
sorry. Go ahead.
Now you good, you good. I took my daughter off social media, my youngest,
Excellent.
because remember we had that conversation. I said I was gonna do it, and I did.
Hmm.
I took her off. I refused to give it back.
Good.
I refuse to get it. She's gonna have to be like 15 before she
Word.
gets it back. Seriously, I took her off. I refused because I'm telling you, she's a different kid.
Mm.
She is a different kid without it. And I like,
Mm.
I know all this shiny stuff. I know all these bells and whistles. I know all this stuff is entertaining. And we think
Hmm.
but we're losing sight of what's real and
We
what's
are.
fake. When I
Yeah.
was little, I used to, I couldn't stand watching scary movies.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
I just, but something they would tell me, but it's not real. You know it's not real. It's not. I'm like,
I don't
I
know
don't
that.
care. It's scary. It can still it still affects your mind. But
Hmm.
we got to be careful because we can be conditioned to eh, feel or believe anything.
Yeah. Agreed. And on that level, and I'm gonna go back to something else you said in a second, but to that, for children, they don't know what's real and what's not. So like we have the ability to decipher, to decode perhaps, some of those same scary movies that we may look at now from our childhood that was just, oh my God, so real. We look at it now and be like, yo, I was tripping, bruh. But as a child, it's just real. What I see is real, and it
Yeah.
is informing me. It is educating me. It is training me on social norms and how to behave and stuff. So it's like, yes, you must take that away from the young children because it's shaping them and not in the way that you. I was just saying that you did right to remove that from your young child because like children don't know what's real and what's not. Like we know what's not because we're adults. We're mature. We've lived in the same way that, like I was saying, if we go back and watch those horror movies that were just so terrifying to us in the 80s, now we just see, yo, that looks so fake. I think about that with Jaws all the time. I could not watch Jaws, bruh. It terrified me, frightened me. But then when I see it now, I'm like, I was stupid for thinking
I know.
that this was scary. But children, again, aren't able to make those distinctions. So I commend you, for being, for guiding her better. But
But I need to do more.
and I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. This
It's
everybody
hard.
got to start somewhere.
I know,
Yes.
but
And
it's
now I forgot
it's
my other
definitely
point.
hard. This world has made it hard because
It is.
there's so
It
many
is
shiny things.
so many. Right. And like even my my daughter, we talk about her all the time, but she complains a lot about her siblings. So she's 23 and she got I think a 10 and a 9-year old sibling. And she talks about just how spoiled they are. Right. And so, like, because they're so spoiled, she's like, basic things that she couldn't do or get away with, they get to get away with. Like she mentioned or brought up a story to me of how her and her family went to this, like, kind of like, like a dinner theater sort of situation. And so towards the end of it, they could not find her sister. So they're like looking everywhere, like, where's her sister? Where's her sister? And stuff. Nobody could find her. Of course, panic is creeping in. So when they found the sister, they saw that she had just went off on a tour with another group, totally different group. Never said nothing to them about it. She just walked off. Well, my daughter was like, her family was just like, well, just tell us next time. Very soft, very no inconsequential, no punishment, and they let her do it. I would have snatched my child from that
Right.
tour, been like, you don't get to do that. You don't get to inflict this type of panic in me. You don't run nothing. You a child. You get to ask me to
I,
go on
I
this
hear
tour.
you. I hear you, but
But I hear a but.
yeah, yeah. Do we benefit by putting fear in our kids' heart?
I 100% believe we do. I 100%. I think fear is the gateway to respect.
It's one gateway to respect for sure. There's other ways to get to respect, but
I
fear
haven't
is one of
seen it.
those powerful. Love can be a way you can
I
love
haven't
someone and
seen it.
respect them.
I
It
think we
exists.
say that, but I think what's been proven is fear. It's like we're holding on to
Admiration,
something that has not been proven.
admiration, someone who's been able to demonstrate, you know, that they deserve respect. How people carry it. It's not always fear is one that we lean to so easily, but it only lasts as long as the fear is there. Once
I
the fear is gone,
disagree. I disagree. So, like, I grew up in that era where you feared your parents, you feared authority figures, period. You feared your elders. And like I said, that was a way of respect, towards respect. And so we were taught that when it came to like authority and elders was because if they saw us, caught us doing something crazy, they was going to tell our people. And then that's a
right?
that's a butt whooping. That's
Not
fear.
so. Yeah, I agree. Like I do believe. I think there's a thin line between fear and I think fear and respect are two different things. Now that I'm
Well, they
thinking about it.
are.
I don't think I think fear looks mimics like respect, but it really isn't respect. Like
Well,
if
we never
I'm
said
doing
we
something,
weren't
if I'm
talking
doing
about it as
something,
it was the same.
if
We said
I'm
fear
doing,
is a gateway to respect.
I know, and I'm backtracking I'm a
Okay.
little bit on this because I'm thinking um, fear and respect they look similar, but they're really not the same. You can't have one is not going to achieve the other. What happens with fear is you comply because of the need for self-preservation ultimately. But if that fear of self-preservation isn't there, then you're more likely to do the thing that that person who's implementing the fear is trying to keep you from doing. So, like for example, training my dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could train my dog by keeping it on a leash, keep it tethered to me, uh, you know, talking stern to it, whatever, like implementing control over it,
Mm-hmm.
and it will obey. But as soon as I relinquish control, it's gonna go. It's that instinctive behavior is gonna go. Now I can train my dog to respect me, and whether I have it on leash or not, is gonna always see me as his master.
Well, you're not explaining what training your dog to respect you looks like. How do you do that?
Okay, so when you're training your dog, you first of all you take time to understand them and what they how they respond. It's no longer just do what I say and force. Like, now I understand you're a dog and you really can't understand English. So now I gotta train you to understand me. And so I'm very particular if I do, because I went through training with my dog. If I give a command and they do it, I have to send a signal you did it right. I have to love, and it's not only just making sure that they're doing the right signal, but I also got to show love. Like, my dog needs to get excited and happy when she sees me. And so she needs to know that she's safe, that she's loved, that she's cared for. And when you do those things, they look to you, they're dependent on you, they look to you for that guidance. And so if you add that relationship with them, and you add the understanding of how to communicate in a way that they understand, then you have a sense of respect. And so
Okay,
I can tell
so what do you do when your dog doesn't listen?
you work with them and you correct the behavior, but you don't correct it using fear. You can correct behavior without fear. You can sit so
So what
when
does
I
that
was
look
trained,
like?
but I tell you, so when I was training my dog, so one of the first things I was trained is to go home, right? And so the command is, hey, go home. And my dog's supposed to get up and go to her crate. First time doing it, go home. You're looking at me like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
And so instead of getting mad and yelling like, go home now, I walked to her. I pat her head. I was like, hey, walk, come. I had a little treat in my hand and I put it by her nose, she walked with me. I like, walk with me. And she walked with me trying to get the treat. Then I put the treat on the other side of the crate. She gets in the crate. I give her the treat. Great job. That's what I want. And then we did that about 10 times. And then I would do it without putting the treat in her nose. I would I would just hold the treat or not even pick the treat up, and I would say, "Walk with me." And before she get in the cage, I'll say, "Go home," and she'll walk in the cage, go home. Then I give her a treat, say, "Great job." And then I went from using the treat to showing her love, like, "Man, good job, girl." And I would grab her, pick her up, and I know this is a tedious process, but it built a relationship of trust. Like, she's like, I know what you want, and I want to give you what you want.
Yeah, so I hear that so differently. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but on the lines of establishing trust and respect, and talking about fear, what you more so spoke to was how you responded when she did what you needed her to do. Like, the fear comes in when you don't do what I told you to do. And that's why fear, in my mind, is a gateway to respect. It's not, you don't fear anything when you're doing right.
Why do people go against good advice?
I'm not sure. They
Why do
think
people
they
break
know
law?
better.
What? Why do people break laws? You think they break laws to what? What do you think? Number one reason why teenagers commit crime?
Well, I mean, commit crimes. I'm not sure, but I would say maybe like disobey or push is because they think that they know better. They want what they want. They're selfish.
Trying to prove something, right?
Mhm.
What are they trying to prove?
What are they trying to prove? That they know better than you?
Yeah, or that they got it.
Okay.
They independent. They don't need you, whatever they mean. Yeah, and those may be negative terms, but you can also think about, okay, maybe this kid is trying to trying to make you proud. Yes, a weird way of doing it, but they're trying to show you, hey, I can handle life. Or maybe they're trying to say, I can show you that I can make good decisions. No, you know what I mean? But they go out there unprepared
Mhm.
because they're so busy trying to fight you, they can't use your route. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
though you've given them all the right tools, but because they have to go against you because they feel like they have to show you that there's another way, they find themselves doing the complete opposite, even though what they know you're asking them sounds good. I think that's a relationship issue. I think that sometimes kids and parents have this strained relationship, maybe born out of, you know, that fear implementation, and then when they get past that fear and they're like, well, I can show you, you don't have, you don't have to be all beat me up in order for me to be successful. I'm going to show you.
Mm, I mean, again, I hear what you're saying. You are definitely more on the side of a soft parent, and I am not. I am definitely more old school, in the mentality of how we parent, and as a Gen X, like we came from that era where we got beat upside our heads, right? Like I came from the era where my mother told me if I don't hit somebody who hit me, she gonna whoop me, what I'm saying, when I get home. Like I come from that era. And so that was fear that was instilled in me as a young kid. And I was not a fighter as a young kid, did not want to do it. But what I knew is that I feared my mother more. I didn't want that ass whooping from her. So when so and so at school put their hands on me, I knew I had to knock them out. Okay. Now, while that may be a skewed to some people who hear a story like that, and I didn't understand it at that time, as an adult, I 100% appreciate my mom and respect her, even for teaching me that lesson that was bred through fear. And
So
I
can I
think
ask
that's
you,
the thing about, I'm sorry,
can you be a warrior without fear?
without it, I don't think so.
Without being taught fear, can
I
you
don't think
be
so.
you don't think you could be a warrior without talking
I
fear?
don't.
Because most warriors, when you talk about real warriors, you gotta be able to bypass fear.
Yeah, but it's still there. Right. But I'm bypassing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to be brave. I have to show bravery over fear if I'm truly going to be successful as a warrior. I'm going to be
Agree.
less successful if I'm fighting out of fear than I'm fighting out of bravery and courage. It's a different thing. And I think you can teach courage. I think you can teach bravery without using fear.
I disagree. How? Because how can you teach that without teaching or them knowing fear? Because fear could look
Knowing
like,
fear and teaching fear or using fear is two different things. I can know what fear looks like and understand that fear is bad. Fear,
mm-hmm.
even God says, He's like, I didn't give you the spirit of fear. So fear is
But
bad. Fear
yeah,
is
he wants you to
evil.
fear him.
Yeah, that's a different. So you got to be careful about these
Nah, bruh.
translations.
Nah, bruh.
Come on,
See, now
come on,
y'all
come on,
trying
come
to
on.
use it as
Hold
respect.
on, hold on. Come on, come on. You got to be careful about these translations because language is limited. I don't think
Oh,
it's. I know
I,
it's not the
I
same
agree.
fear as the fear that we talk about when we talk about make a kid, listen to us. I think it's that fear is because it's two different. Even in the Greek, I mean the Hebrew, it's two different words. It's a fear of respect. It's because fear and respect sound so similar. I think that meant respect. You should respect me.
Of course you
I could
do.
be wrong.
And that
I
is
could
why
be
I'm
wrong.
saying this is such a convoluted conversation about this whole fear and respect thing. Like it's one in this, it goes hand in hand.
I hear you. 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 I do. But I don't. I believe the fear that people implement, and this is my own personal opinion,
Mhm.
so it could be wrong. The fear that people implement to get people to do things has been associated with some of the most evilest acts.
Absolutely. It has been
Think about
perverted.
bullying. Think about bullying. Bullies operate out of fear. As long as you're
Mm-hmm.
afraid of them, you
Mm-hmm.
do. As soon as you stand up to a bully, they stop being a bully because they
Right.
operate out of fear. Most of the most heinous acts in the world have been used out of fear, and some of the most heroic acts has gone against fear.
Expound on that one,
Implemented fear.
please.
So okay, think about any heroic act. Let's take Martin Luther King. It's the first one
Mm-hmm.
that pops. Right.
Okay.
Okay, so all in here in the South, everyone's afraid. Back then was afraid of being lynched or what white people are going to do. What they'll do to you. They tell you, death threats. I'm going to hang you, nigger. Things like whatever they said they're going to do. But instead of being letting that fear consume you, someone like Martin Luther King was like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to allow your fear to be a part to implement me. I'm going to show you, I'm going to return your fear with courage, with bravery. I'm going to go against, because if fear would have been triumphant, you would have we would have lost. And let me switch to another one. Let's go to a Malcolm X. Let's go to someone who stood up to fear with strength, because it wasn't like it was fear. I mean, for some people it might have been fear, but I think what he showed up with was strength to fight fear. You're like, I'm gonna make you should be afraid of me. You're like, I'm not afraid of you. Matter of fact, I'll stand up to you. I will fight.
Yeah, what he
I
was
will
saying was, you
fight
should be
with you.
afraid of me.
I don't think that was his goal. Like, I don't think his goal wasn't to eradicate the white race. His goal was to separate from the white race, maybe at one point. Then he changed it once he went to Mecca, but it wasn't to eradicate. Like we were targeted as for eradication, or at least to be shut up and put in our place, and be a continue being a slave or a servant.
Hmm.
And he was just standing up to that, saying, no, we're not, and we will fight for our freedom, because I have the courage to actually do it. And I think there's a difference. I think we teach fear as if it's strength, and everything else is as a weakness. Like, if you're not barking and yelling and ready to fight, or suppress and make someone afraid of you, if you're not doing that, you're weak. And I don't believe
I
that that's
think I think yeah, I think that's probably where the disconnect is our definitions of that. So like the fear word. When I said that Malcolm was like, you should fear us, that was not from a violent perspective. When I was saying that he said y'all that they should fear us, that was from a you literally need us. You
right.
need
Okay.
us.
Right.
Y'all should be the ones fearing us, because if we really go away, get out of here to what did y'all claim y'all want us to, then what will you have? We
Right.
provide you with everything. Y'all
Right.
should fear us. That's more so what I'm speaking to. It wasn't about, just a violent thing. And that's what people, tried to make him
Right.
out to be.
And
Um,
I do agree. I agree with you on that aspect. So I'll step back a little bit on what I'm
no, you
saying.
good.
I do agree with that. I do have a slight tinge to that, though. So yes, but it's a thin line once again between fear and respect. I would, yes, if it takes fear for you to leave me alone, so be it. I'll show you. I tell my I tell I told my daughter's boyfriend, I'm a monster too. Don't
Right.
take the smile.
And that was going to
You
be
don't
my
want to see
next point.
it.
There's
You
a
don't want
time
to
and a
see.
place for
You don't
the
want to
the
see. You don't want
strength
to see
and
the
fear
monster.
and the violence of fear.
you know, but if I had to choose, like if I could, and I love how this general put it, when it's famous general, but if I could, I would rather have your respect. I'd rather you say, man, you are like my equal. I'd rather that than to have you afraid of me. Because if you're afraid of me, you're my enemy.
So
Think
my
about that for a
twinge.
second. Think about that for a second, though. If you are afraid of me, that makes you my enemy, because
I've thought
nobody
about
wants to be afraid. Eventually, you're gonna fight what if you get put in a corner. You're gonna fight what you're afraid of.
it. So as a fighter,
Okay.
um, Not so much, but I understand. That could be applicable to some. I believe with that fear and respect thing and that fine line, thin line, is that there's a time and a place for that. So for me, as children, like when you're as a parent and you're rearing children, I believe you're supposed to instill in them initially to fear you as a parent. That's my belief. So that fear looks like you do what I say, and when I don't, that's just whatever it looks like. That could be standing in a corner, it could be a switch, you know. But then as you grow older, you mature, then we transition from that. I don't believe that children, like when they're just starting off, they have the capacity to understand respect, which is why we use fear. But then that's like I said, it's supposed to transition. You can't just get children who are actually literally wired to press boundaries, to bend rules, to try to see if they can get as much as they can get from you, out of you, respect. But what we can teach them is no, when I told you, for example, that stove was hot, don't touch it, and you burnt your hand, what you got to fear that stove now because now your hand is burnt. But then as you learn what hot is, the consequences of not listening, then it becomes more of a respect situation between you and your children, and then it becomes an we are equals. We not equals when you're 6. I don't negotiate with children. We're equal. Me and my daughter, 23. Me, sure, we are both adults. Okay.
Yeah. So in the stove analogy, when you first touch that stove, your first response is fear.
Mm-hmm.
This can hurt me. I don't want to touch this.
Right.
But at some point, you have to come back and say, this can help me. I can't be afraid of it. I have to learn how to use it for my
Well,
benefit.
that to me is where respect comes in. But everything is a journey. So you first fear that stove until you respect heat, until you respect fire.
Okay.
Now it's no longer a fear.
Okay.
I know what this is. And so
Okay.
let me respond accordingly.
Okay. So let's take this then back to the races. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say for some reason black people made the world fear them. Like let's say we had a Wakanda who was technologically weapon everything was more advanced, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we had the world on lock and the world feared us.
Mm-hmm.
What should we keep that fear? What should we do
I
once
think
we got them on
absolutely we
lock?
should. And I'm saying that honestly from a biased perspective because that's what they did. But um,
Keep the
yeah,
shit going, huh?
yeah, keep it going. I mean, we need at least 400 years of keeping this going, if you ask me. But yeah, I think we should. I think it could start as fear, yes, because people fear the unknown. So I get that, but then there comes a level of when you understand, you have a respect for it. So a respect for what maybe we built, this Wakanda, this community, these resources, all that. There has to be a respect that follows that.
Yeah. Do you think that there would ever be, and this going back to my original question,
Mm-hmm.
do you think there would ever be an opportunity if the shoe was on the other foot, if we were in charge, would there ever be an opportunity for the world to get to a harmonious place and stop seeing each other as different races and just as humans?
I believe that our group of people, are the only ones capable of creating that
Mm.
utopia. I do not believe that it would happen in 2, 3 generations. It's going to be a long time before it happens, but it's only us who can make that happen, I
Yeah.
believe.
I wish I had like some kind of control. I,
Mm-hmm.
I, I'm just going to freestyle it for a second.
Okay.
So this is not necessarily what I'm just thinking out loud.
Okay.
I wish I had some type of control, something that the world needed and only I can give it. And they had to come to me. And I had all the cards in my hand. They couldn't take it from me. They couldn't kill me. Nothing. They needed
Mm-hmm.
me. They needed me personally. And now I can negotiate at the table. I
Mm,
can sit at the table and I can negotiate. I always
mm,
think about this, like, what would be your first negotiation? Like, they need you. Like, you've created perpetual energy, or you can save the ozone layer, or you know what I mean,
right.
or you can replenish the earth so that we don't have to leave here one day. Like, you can save humanity, and you
Mm-hmm.
have the tools, and only you. Nobody can steal it. Nobody can manipulate. Nobody can buy it. Now the world is sitting at the table, and you're in charge, and you can negotiate whatever you want. What would you ask for? What would you put in place?
What would I put in place?
What would you negotiate?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I even have enough time to really digest and think about that question. Like, what would I put in place? Um, because as a melanated person who knows the majority, not the majority, but majority of our history, our real history, I know that we're just that. Exactly what you described is who we are, and we don't know it. So when they do come to us trying to purchase our intellectual property, or our athleticism, our, all those things, because we don't realize that we have the power, we just essentially just hand it to you. So I don't know. I do not know what I could put in place.
Mm.
Um, with that being such a great question for you, have you thought about that? Like, do you
I
know?
have. I
Okay.
have. Man, there'll be so many things I probably asked for, like our nuclear arsenal, the world's nuclear arsenal,
You would
uh,
ask for the world's nuclear arsenal
to be gone.
to be gone. Okay.
Yeah, we don't need nuclear weapons.
Why not? I'm sorry. That's probably a different conversation. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't need. We can use nuclear technology. We don't need nuclear weapons.
Hmm.
You know, because I think it destroys anything that can destroy the Earth, and humans have access to it. Eventually, we're going to destroy the Earth with it.
Hmm.
I would want us to. I would want to create treaties and create. I don't even know if I would create states and cities. I would say this is dreaming. This is dreaming.
Mm.
But I would remove our titles, our identifiers. You're
Such as,
African, you're
okay.
Asian, you're
Oh no!
you're
Why?
New Yorker, you're I think those are all divisions. You're from we
Now
put so many
states I
divisions
can
up.
understand, but country comes with culture, so I'm not sure.
You can
Like, why would
have
you
you
remove
can
culture?
you can keep your culture, but I think culture can be a division too. Like our culture keeps us separated.
Hmm.
I would say you share your culture. You share your culture. We need to become one melting pot of a culture. We all need to
But
be
why?
on the same, because we can't evolve
But difference is
as a
beautiful.
race. No, I'm not saying we don't have different. Like you can have. I don't want cookie cutter people. I don't want people walking
Hmm.
around everybody looking just the same. No, we can have a melting pot of cultures and differences. I just don't want there to be a a a, a, a divide between one culture or the other. I don't want one culture feeling like they're better than the other. I want each
Got
culture
you.
to feel like they contribute to the overall success of humanity.
Agreed. Okay.
And as long as you can create this society where we're not all divided into, because we're powerful if we're together. I would get rid of the financial money. I would get rid of money.
Mm.
Now I know this probably sounds what's that word? Not capitalism, but Russians they use
Communism.
communism.
Mm.
Sounds like
I'm all for
communism.
that. Mm.
But I would get rid of money and base it on I wouldn't even base it on anything. I would say our basic needs are just met.
Yeah, if one has, we all have.
Society, society's basic needs are met. Nobody has more than they can handle.
Right.
Nobody has less than they need. And no, and it is not about that like someone living lavish versus someone. No, I don't think that's not. I don't think that's necessary. I think we all should have access to the best, but
Right.
just enough for what we need. Like there
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be, you know, once again, you can have your own style, but it shouldn't be oh, I gotta drive a 1982, hoopty while you get to drive a 2025 Nissan Pathfinder. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If
So
you
you're
have
saying that we all get Mercedes, AMG, whatever, but yours could be red, mine could be black, hers could be white, that sort of
if you want to drive a 1982 Chevrolet Corvette, you can.
thing. Mm-hmm.
Like all cars are one price.
Mm, okay.
They're not even
Got
a price.
you.
If you want to ride it, you want to have it, you can have it. But you get one car per person
Mm-hmm.
of driving age. If you want yours
Right.
to be a Lincoln, Navigator, that's fine. But you get one. You can only drive one car. You get one car. You don't need
Mm-hmm.
a parking lot full of cars for no
Right.
reason.
Right.
Whatever car,
And you would
whatever you
eradicate.
want a Lamborghini, that's what you want. Because those things aren't practical. They're fun,
Yeah,
like
and they're because of they feed into the whole notion of capitalism. You know,
right,
the ability to afford something or have access to something that somebody else does not. So you're
yeah,
saying you would eradicate that, which I do
eradicate that.
respect. Mm-hmm.
Eradicate that. None of that. None of that. We all eat health. We regulate. We all eat healthy.
Mm-hmm.
We all contribute to the society. We man, crime. I want eliminated. There should be no need for
Mm-hmm.
crime. Drugs. No need for drugs. You know, and even market drugs like health drugs. Make sure that they work and not kill
Mm-hmm.
people.
Okay. We ain't guinea
Like
pig.
we, I'm, we gonna change society. We promote healthy families and good relationships. You know, we that now that's a little complicated because that's a whole
Wait, and you're
conversation.
saying this is in exchange for what now from you?
Something that I have that you need. Maybe it's
Okay.
perpetual energy. Maybe it's a power source that never goes out. Maybe it's restoring the ozone or
Mm-hmm.
making the world back, getting off of fossil fuels. Maybe introducing faster than light travel.
Mm-hmm.
FLT so that we can join the space community.
Mm-hmm.
Something that brings us maybe is complete health or some form of rejuvenation of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it may be, immortality.
Yeah.
But before you can get it, you have to demonstrate a certain ability to be able to handle it.
Right.
And I would
Responsible.
lay
Yeah.
down these. I would, and it'll have to be as a world. Like if you want this, like y'all can continue living the way you living, or you can actually have something 10 times better, and I give it to you
Mm-hmm.
freely. But here are the things that you need to change.
So what happens when you die?
It continues.
How do you maintain that contract? Is what I'm asking.
There'll be, okay. In this world, there'll be some type of gatekeeper that
Mm-hmm.
would probably not be a human
Mm.
that could trust
Okay.
a line of people who we're just dreaming here. I mean,
Right.
we're living in a
Right.
dream world. You know what I mean? But let's get back to reality. Here's my point. What will it take for us to get out of this selfish mindset that causes us to use fear to control the world
Well, I
to
think I'm sorry.
a mindset that helps us work together as a family?
Well, I would honestly start with that word that you use, selfish. And I think that we have to acknowledge and admit to ourselves that we are. I think that would actually be the starting point. I think so many of the laws and the rules and, the distinctions and differences in status is because we don't accept that we're actually selfish. I don't want you to have because I want it all. Like,
Yeah,
so you got to acknowledge that first.
yeah.
Once you acknowledge it, I think you have to reframe what someone else having access means to you. Like, it really doesn't take anything from you. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't harm you.
Oh,
You go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I'm with you. You're
Oh,
right. It doesn't harm you. It helps.
mm-mm.
You should
It
want your
helps.
fellow man to be at their best. Like I want you
But
to have
that's for people who actually believe in humanity. I don't
yeah,
believe that most people believe in humanity because they're selfish and they can't
right.
acknowledge that.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
I, I was reading this journal that I do. The journal is called "How to Deal with Strong Emotions."
Mm-hmm.
I do a lesson with young people on dealing with difficult emotions and strong emotions, and it talks about the four strongest negative emotions. You know what the top four negative strongest emotions are?
Let's see. Would it be jealousy,
There's a better
envy?
word for jealousy, but so a lot of people think anger. Anger's in there.
Okay.
Sadness is in there. Boredom.
That's wild.
Boredom. And the last one is um oh Lord. Hold on, give it to me, give me a second.
Mhm.
Not envy. You got me stuck in envy, but
I'm
it's
sorry.
resentment.
Resent. Yep.
Resentment. Resentment. So resentment, boredom, sadness, and anger are your
Mm-hmm.
top four strongest negative emotions, most destructive
Mm-hmm.
emotions: anger, sadness, boredom, and resentment.
I have been my most destructive out of boredom. My absolute most. Yes.
For
Mm-hmm.
sure. For sure. And people don't
Yeah.
realize it. Like so many people
Right.
do stupid stuff just because they
I
were
sure did.
bored.
Yes.
Just because they were bored, man. Some
Yep.
stupid stuff, man. I can't even
Mm-hmm.
begin to tell you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. But think about resentment too. You know,
That's a heavy one.
I hate what you have. Or I wish
Mm.
I had what you had.
Correct.
You know? I
Yep.
mean, think about, Billy got more love than me growing up. Or, you know,
Mm.
my friends seem to have we let resentment eat us up. Sadness,
We
depression.
do, but just kind of sticking with resentment, like how do we deal with that in this utopia, in this fantasy utopia, that we were just talking about a moment ago? So when everything is leveled, everybody is equal, everybody has access to the same things, right? And so like what you just said, your illustration, Billy resents Jody because Jody gets more love from Jody's parents than Billy does, and that creates resentment. So how would a communal people respond to that to prevent the resentment.
I think we have to establish a system of elders.
I love that. And yeah, we missed that.
Ah, you like that, right?
Yeah.
A system of elders who are
Mm-hmm.
wise that you can turn to in your community when
Mm-hmm.
there is disputes, that know how to restore that
Mm-hmm.
level of equality, you know, and remove that desire of resentment. We
Correct.
need gurus who you go to and say, you know what, I'm feeling something negative towards so and so. He has
Mm-hmm.
all these good things going on. And you need someone to snap that person back in reality.
Yep. And then
You know?
tying into what you said earlier, out of respect for your elders, you
Yeah.
listen. You don't
Yes.
challenge. You
Yes.
know, when they give you their little sprinkle, their little gems on you, you take it.
Yep. When they say the sun shines on the good and the bad, and
Mm-hmm.
why not you? You know, or what some words of wisdom. You
Right.
you take it and you're like, okay, I'm gonna process this and I'm gonna do better with it. I think we need that. I think that needs to be
Mm-hmm.
said because
That's a great solution.
we're constantly going to grow to evolve, but I don't think we can get to the next evolution until we work together as a race.
Right. Right. I definitely respect that.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think happened to the elders? I mean, I don't believe that we ever in the West had elders. We never did. We only had government. But for those indigenous,
There's the problem right there.
yeah.
What happened to the elders? Government.
Right. Right. There you go. I answer my own question,
You ask
huh?
your own question. What happened to the elders? Government.
Yes.
And government ain't
Yes.
trying to look
I
out for
love
you.
that.
They trying to use you. They want to use you. They don't want to look
Mm-hmm.
out for you. Oh, my
Mm-hmm.
constituents. Right. You
Right.
getting greased. Your hand getting greased.
Okay.
Your constituents
Yes.
is the big companies that are paying you so that you can, run again next year.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So,
You
but
said
yeah, so
bring
we
back
get
the
real,
elders.
real
Oh, I love that.
right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That is their job. They don't get paid. See, once you remove that financial burden, people can think.
Mm-hmm.
People can create.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what it would be if the financial burden was removed and you get to do
Yes.
things you're passionate about.
Correct. And that's what I said earlier. Like, in order to get rid of crime, you got to get rid of poverty. You got to get rid of the have and the have nots. That financial burden is huge. The lack of financial resources drives people to not be creative, to not think, to do things that they ordinarily would not want to or just do.
Right.
So, yes,
So the
a
only
100%
problem I
agree.
think we would have is for people who don't want to contribute at all. They just want to sit and benefit from everybody else's work. That's the only thing I haven't worked out. Like, what would we do with them?
I'm not sure that we would really even have that.
I don't think so. I think there'll be too much pressure if the majority of us, was buying into this. It'd be too much
Right.
pressure. But you're gonna always have someone who's I don't want to do
So, as an
anything.
outlier.
Yeah, I just want to benefit. I don't want to have to do anything. Um,
Yeah.
I think it would require us to teach a lesson. Like, it's like maybe put them on an island and say, let's see you defend for yourself. Let's say if it was good for everyone to do nothing, let's see how you do with no one helping you. And
Mm-hmm.
see if you could just sit here and live life without being helped.
Mm-hmm.
Until they learn that lesson. Then once they learn that lesson, because they'll probably learn it real quick, they need help. Like, all right, come back and join our society.
Right.
Come on,
Right.
come join our society. Come
Mm-hmm.
back. You can come back and be with us and stuff like that. But I think you have to do have that's where the elders come in. You have to be creative in educating those that may be struggling. Going back to my
Mhm.
training my dog scenario. Yeah, there's things my dogs don't want to do, but it's because he doesn't understand that this is for his benefit. But once he
Mhm.
understands it, I can say to my dog right now, I could be on the phone and my dog could be walking around and I could just say, "Hey, Evelyn, go home."
Mhm.
And my voice she'll go. And
Mhm.
others say it, and my wife get mad because she'll be like, "Evelyn, go home." Evelyn look at her like,
Like, girl.
like really, woohoo. But yeah, as soon as I say it's there she go.
Mhm. Got you.
So I know we didn't answer fully the question of how do we restore the home,
Mhm.
but I do think we hit a root part of it,
Yeah.
and that's this fear thing.
Yeah.
We gotta
Mm.
remove the fear
Well, we did
of.
not agree on that, but we did say that. Yes,
Well, I
we
do.
did.
I think we got to remove the fear of all the fears, the fear of failure, the
Mhm.
fear of being hurt, the fear of whatever, and replace it with courage and strength.
Mhm.
Stand up to do what's right.
Mhm.
So
I agree with that. Like you said, my favorite one, bring back the elders. Yeah, making everything equal.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be major ways to restore, and that's something that even like I said, won't you won't see in 2 to 3 generations. That's going to take several generations to get to, and to get the collective.
All right, I think I might have lost her. Great show. I hope you guys get something out of it. We'll continue this. We'll see you guys next week.